In a Hong Kong police station, officers light incense to a statue, a tradition going back a century. Across the same city, in a locked back room, a triad recruit kneels and swears his blood oath to the exact same face. Cops, gangsters, sworn enemies, one God. And he is not a myth. He was a real soldier who lived 1800 years ago and died a loser, defeated, captured, and beheaded. What follows is his story, the way China actually tells it, the legend a billion people grew up on. Where the history disagrees, the receipts are in the description. Because to understand why cops and gangsters kneel to the same man, you don't need the history, you need the legend. The Han dynasty is dying. 400 years of empire rotting from the head down. Rebellion in the fields, warlords sharpening knives. In a northern market town, 3 strangers meet in a crowd. Liu Bei, a sandal weaver with a drop of imperial blood and an empire-sized ambition. Zhang Fei, a butcher with money, a temper, and a peach orchard behind his house. And a fugitive with a magnificent beard, 6'10", a face dark as red dates, wanted for killing a local tyrant who preyed on the weak. His name was Guan Yu. In the peach orchard, with a black bull and a white horse for sacrifice, the 3 swear an oath before heaven. We ask not to be born on the same day. We ask only to die on the same day. Remember the oath. Every promise in this story gets collected. 3 men, 1 oath, against every army in a collapsing empire. The warlords gather to destroy the tyrant Dong Zhuo. And at the pass, the tyrant's champion Huarong is butchering their generals one by one. The coalition is paralyzed. Then a nobody steps forward. A bow cavalry officer with a rank so low the aristocrats laugh in his face. Cao Cao pours him a cup of hot wine. The nobody says, "Pour it out. I'll be back before it cools." Outside, the drums explode, the mountains shake. Then he rides back in and throws Huarong's head on the ground. The wine was still warm. 5 characters. Chinese readers have been repeating them for 600 years. It was the world's first introduction to Guan Yu, and the last time anyone laughed at him. In the year 200, disaster. Liu Bei's little army is smashed, the brothers scattered, and Guan Yu is cornered, guarding his brother's 2 wives, by the most powerful warlord in the north, Cao Cao. Guan Yu will not surrender, so he sets conditions instead to the most feared man in China. 1. I surrender to the Han Emperor, not to you. 2. My brother's wives will be kept safe and honored. 3. The day I learn where my brother is, I leave, no matter how far. Any other warlord would have taken his head. Cao Cao took the deal, because Cao Cao collected the deadliest men in China, and he wanted this one more than any of them. Gold, silk, banquets, a mansion. Guan Yu locks the treasures away and stands guard outside his sister-in-law's door all night, with a candle and a book of history. That image, the warrior reading by candlelight, refusing every luxury in the room, will be painted 1,000,000 times over the next 1,000 years. Then, Cao Cao plays his best card, a horse. Red Hare, the finest war horse alive, a beast that runs 1,000 li in a day. For the first time, Guan Yu bows in genuine gratitude. Cao Cao is delighted until he hears why. With a horse this fast, the day I learn where my brother is, I can reach him in a single day. Cao Cao's smile dies. The greatest gift he owns just became a getaway vehicle. Then comes Baima. Yuan Shao's champion, Yan Liang, wrapped in tens of thousands of men, is crushing Cao Cao's front line. Guan Yu looks across the battlefield, spots Yan Liang's command canopy. and charges, straight at it, into the entire army. The Red Hare is too fast. Yan Liang barely raises his weapon before the blade comes down. One stroke. He takes the head, ties it to his saddle, and rides back out through 10,000 men. Nobody dares to touch him. Days later, he does it again, to Yuan Shao's other champion, Wen Chou. Two of the most feared generals in the north, dead in a week by the same hand. The court makes him a marquis. And then a letter arrives, in secret. Liu Bei is alive. Guan Yu seals every gift Cao Cao ever gave him, every single one. He hangs the marquis seal in the hall, takes the horse, the 2 wives, and 1 carriage, and rides. Condition 3. He warned them. Cao Cao's officers beg to hunt him down. Cao Cao refuses. He serves his master. Let him go. But the road north is sealed. 5 passes, 6 commanders. None of them got the memo. He kills all 6 and delivers the women through every gate. In Chinese, 5 passes, 6 generals is still what you say about any road that tried to stop someone and failed. Remember the mercy at the gate. It has a price, and it will be collected from the other side. 8 years later, Red Cliffs. Cao Cao brings the largest fleet China has ever seen and watches it burn to the waterline in a single night. The greatest warlord alive flees through the marshes with the wreck of an army, horses dying in the mud. The strategist, Zhuge Liang, has calculated every step of the escape route, and the final ambush, the one that can end the war and take Cao Cao's head, he hands to Guan Yu. But he knows exactly who Guan Yu is. So first he makes him sign a military pledge. Let Cao Cao pass, and you die by the code. Guan Yu signs it. On the Huarong road, the mud does half the killing. And then, blocking the path, on the red horse, the man Cao Cao once let ride away. Cao Cao cannot fight, so he talks. The gifts, the banquets, the open gate and the order not to pursue. Guan Yu sits on his horse with a signed death warrant in his saddlebag and his own death staring up at him from the mud. He turns the horse aside. The most dangerous man in China walks out alive, and Guan Yu rides back to face his own execution. He is spared. But China never forgot the choice. He valued a debt of honor above a war, above an empire, above his own head. This is the scene the gangsters worship. This is the scene the police worship. Hold that thought. The empire settles into 3 armed camps. Guan Yu gets the deadliest posting of all, Jing Province, wedged between both enemy powers at once. The years harden into legend around him. He crosses the river alone, 1 blade, no army, to a banquet full of assassins, and walks out untouched with a hostage's arm in his grip. An old arrow wound acts up. The legendary physician Hua Tuo opens his arm and scrapes the poison off the bone. No anesthesia, because anesthesia does not exist. Guan Yu plays chess through the entire operation. Blood fills the basin. He never misses a move. The southern warlord Sun Quan proposes a marriage alliance, his son, Guan Yu's daughter. Guan Yu's answer becomes one of the most famous insults in Chinese history. Shall a tiger's daughter marry the son of a dog? The South does not forget. In 219, Guan Yu marches north. Cao Cao sends 7 armies to stop him, 30,000 men under the veteran Yu Jin. With them rides Pang De, carrying his own coffin to the battlefield, swearing to return with Guan Yu's head or inside the box. Guan Yu reads the terrain, reads the swollen river, and dams the water upstream. Then the autumn rains come, and he opens the dam. The flood swallows all 7 armies where they camp. Yu Jin, 30 years of service, surrenders on a hilltop with what's left of 30,000 men. Pang De fights to the last plank of a sinking raft and refuses to kneel. Guan Yu grants him the death he asked for. The coffin does not go home empty. The chronicles seal it in 4 characters. His terror shook China. In Cao Cao's council they debate moving the capital of the empire, to get away from one man. That autumn, his is the most feared name in China. He has a few months left. While Guan Yu hammers the north, the insulted south finally moves. Lu Meng hides his best troops in merchant boats, dresses the rowers in white, and drifts up the river, past every watchtower, seizing the sentries before a single warning fire is lit. The fortress cities behind Guan Yu surrender without a fight. One of them is handed over by Mi Feng, his own side, his brother's kin. The most feared man in China has no home to retreat to. By winter he is cornered in a hill town called Mai Cheng, his army melting away man by man in the dark. Sun Quan sends an envoy offering him life, rank, honor, everything, for one knee. Guan Yu's answer: jade can be shattered, it cannot be made less white. He rides out on one last breakout down a mountain path at night with a handful of riders. Ropes rise in the dark. The Red Hare goes down, and China's god of war is taken alive. They behead Guan Yu at dawn. His son Guan Ping dies beside him. The same day they give the Red Hare to the officer who caught him. The horse refuses every meal, and days later starves itself to death. Even the horse kept the oath, died on the same day, as near as a horse can manage. Sun Quan ships the head north to Cao Cao, a trophy and an alibi. Let Liu Bei's rage aim at someone else. Cao Cao opens the box and looks at the man he let ride away, who then let him walk out of the mud alive. He does not gloat. He has a body carved of fragrant wood fitted to the head, and buries him with the honors of a lord. The debt from Huarong Road, paid in full, to a dead man. So today, one tomb in Luoyang holds his head, another in Dangyang holds his body, and a third back home in Shangji holds his soul. Head resting in Luoyang, body lying in Dangyang, soul returned home. For any other general, that is the end of the story. For Guan Yu, it was a career move. The strangeness begins on a mountain. Legend says a monk meditating on Jade Spring Mountain hears a voice rolling through the dark sky again and again. "Return my head." The monk answers the ghost, "You took heads too, General. Yan Liang's, Wen Chou's. 6 commanders at 5 passes. Who returns theirs?" The sky goes quiet. The ghost bows and becomes a protector instead of a haunting. Meanwhile, Lu Meng, the man who took his province, drops dead at his own victory banquet at 42. The story says Guan Yu's ghost collected him personally in front of the whole court. And that is where the soldier's story ends, and the god's career begins. Buddhist monasteries hire him first, posting him at their gates as a guardian deity. The Taoists make him a heavenly marshal, then keep promoting him. The Confucians do the unthinkable. They raise a military sage to stand opposite Confucius himself. One sage of culture, one sage of war. And the emperors of China, the living ones, keep promoting the dead soldier. Marquis, Duke, Prince. And in 1614, the Wanli Emperor signs the paperwork that breaks the ceiling. Great Emperor who subdues demons of the 3 realms. A dead soldier's rank has nowhere left to climb. He is an emperor now. By 1879, his full official title is 26 characters long. Loyalty, bravery, protection, sainthood. stacked like medals on a uniform with no body inside. Then the merchants get him, and this is the strangest promotion of all. The great trading houses of Shaanxi, his home province, carry his statue down every trade road. The man who sealed up a fortune and rode away becomes the patron saint of keeping your word. On roads where courts are far away and contracts hard to enforce, as trustworthy as Lord Guan becomes the closest thing Asia has to a credit rating. The god of war becomes the god of wealth. The man who refused riches now spends eternity listening to prayers for money. Which brings us back to the two shrines. The police worship the Guan Yu, who beheaded 6 lawless commanders and never once broke his word to authority. Their statues, law says, wear red shoes. The triads worship the Guan Yu of the peach orchard, who swore to die on the same day as his brothers and let an empire slip away to honor a debt. Their statues wear green, same face, same oath. Both sides need the one thing money cannot buy, loyalty that does not flip. They both know one man who had it. By one count, more than 30,000 temples to Guan Yu stand in over 100 countries. Where there are Chinese, there is a temple to Lord Guan. Guan Yu lost his last battle, the province he swore to hold, and his head. Then he won everything else. An empire of temples built on one promise, that somewhere, at least once, there was a man whose word could not be bought. Welcome to the Dragon Files. Subscribe for more.